Video game controllers are extensions of our bodies to rich virtual worlds. We've spent years with the best and minutes with the impostors. Their evolution is vast and complicated, so we singled out 10 controllers that had an impact on gaming and revolutionized an industry. Here are the top 10 revolutionary controllers. The Dreamcast's short run obscured some fun innovations for the video game industry. Take a look at the visual memory unit. It is primarily a memory card, but it is also a second screen and a handheld gaming console in its own right. Sega found some creative uses for the VMU. In silent scope, though we don't recommend it, you could use it as your primary screen to shoot enemies or targets. In Marvel vs. Capcom 2, you could trade your characters by connecting to your friend's VMU. And in Chow Adventure, you could take care of your pet Chow to raise its stats and abilities. Think Tamagotchi, but in a Sonic the Hedgehog universe. Sega had the foresight to envision a world that needed more mobile and second screen gaming. Unfortunately, it came at the nadir of the company's life in console gaming. But don't be surprised if you see some elements of the VMU in the future of gaming. The NES Zapper is the controller behind the classic game Duck Hunt and behind many hours of our childhood. The Zapper is technically the second generation of light gun. The first generation was quickly banned for resembling a real gun. So we will refer to both of them as the Zapper from here on out. Nintendo's innovation here was finding a way to make the Zapper work on any TV. Magnavox took a shot at the same technology over a decade before in 1972, but their light gun only functioned when paired with the Magnavox TV set. The Zapper worked by taking advantage of CRT TV technology. When the trigger is pressed, the game makes the entire screen black for one frame, 1/60th of a second. Then any targets on screen will be drawn white for the next frame. The Zapper reads what it's pointed at and looks for a change in light to determine whether a target was hit or not. If there are multiple targets on screen, each target will flash for a different duration. This sequence takes place over just a fraction of a second and is largely not registered by the eye. Though if any flashing was noticed, it could be mistaken as a muzzle flash. If you were like us, we spent a couple of rounds with the gun point blank against the TV, never missing a shot. Hey, it was proof the technology worked. The Intellivision was released by Mattel in 1979. Smart observers will notice it's a combination of the words intelligent and television. While primarily a home video game console, it was also marketed as a home computer when purchased with a keyboard component. The console came attached with two Intellivision controllers, or as they look like now, a landline phone for your grandma. While not a comfortable thing to use, it did innovate with a 16-direction disc at the bottom of the controller. The first time a console did anything to approach a D-pad. Intellivision controllers also made use of the 12-button keypad with overlays that would ship with games. Certain games like Truckin' and Space Battle made the overlays really useful with specific controls, and other ones ended up treating it as cosmetic. Cumbersome and actually quite difficult to use at times, the Intellivision controller did pave the way for the next generation of controllers by Nintendo and Sega. Left-handed players be damned. The Atari 2600 Joystick is an absolute icon of video game design. Once called the pinnacle of home entertainment controllers, it's important for two reasons. First, the 9-pin port. It could be cheaply made and supported a wide variety of devices. Even Apple and IBM developed machines with these ports. Second, the joystick. Its design is as much a symbol of the time as the Atari logo. The joystick offered newfound control and agility never before seen in home gaming. The joystick was instrumental to the explosion of an industry and iconic games like Space Invaders, Asteroids, and Frogger. Though eventually relegated to specific roles like flight simulators many years later, its dominance and influence cannot be understated. Following the original PlayStation pad and dual analog iteration, came the DualShock. The controller revolutionized modern console controls by incorporating 2 analog control sticks for accurate movement in 3D space. The combination of the graphical prowess of the PS2 and the DualShock's control scheme pushed Sony above its peers in the console wars. Since this is Sony's only entry in the list, we will mention their design choice to mark face buttons with symbols instead of letters or numbers. Sony's lead designer remarks, "We wanted something simple to remember, which is why we went with symbols. I came up with the triangle circle X square combination immediately after and gave each symbol a meaning and color. The triangle refers to a viewpoint, a person's head or direction. It was made green. Square refers to a piece of paper. It represents menus or documents and was pink. The circle and X represents yes and no decision making. They were red and blue." The DualShock will be argued by some to be the greatest controller of all time. They will point to the dual rumble feature, hence the name, the control sticks, the triggers, and its comfortability in long play sessions. Though at times we may be inclined to agree, there's still 5 more to go in the list. Here are a few honorable mentions. The Oculus Rift is definitely revolutionizing virtual reality gameplay, but we haven't seen a breakthrough bit of software yet, and it's still too early to tell what the best version of VR will feel like. The Sega Activator was a full-body, motion-based video controller released in 1993. It didn't really catch on though, and its control scheme left much to be desired. According to Wikipedia, the Wii Fit is referred to as exergaming, a truly upsetting portmanteau. The board was fun, and you could do yoga, strength training, and balance games on it, but it never ended up feeling anything more than a gimmick. The Nintendo 64 controller was designed from the outset to upset the mold of standard gaming controllers. First, we should probably talk about the shape. The 3-pronged Batarang-like shape is still like nothing ever released for console gaming. The 3 prongs allowed for 3 different positions. The left and right handle combination was meant for side-scrolling and fighting games. The middle and right was default, taking advantage of a fully analog 360-degree control stick. And lastly, the almost never used left and middle, designed to emulate a mouse and keyboard. Oh yeah, and there was this monstrosity of a setup too. But beyond the shape, the N64 controller was packed with ideas. The Z trigger, the C buttons, and the expansion port for external memory and Rumble Pack, which let Nintendo beat PlayStation to the Rumble feature by 6 months. The Nintendo 64 controller's biggest contribution to gaming was through the analog control stick. Paired with Super Mario 64, Nintendo established the standard for how a character should move in a 3D environment. It is considered by many to be the single largest leap in play control any game has ever made. The Magnavox Odyssey was the first commercial home video game console. The round box displayed 3 squares in black and white. Players would put plastic overlays over screens to create visuals. The Odyssey controller had 3 knobs which players could use to move horizontally or vertically. There was also a reset button that could be used to reset individual elements within a game as opposed to resetting the system. The Odyssey controller ranks high on this list for letting the world know that home gaming was possible. Heck, Magnavox had to advertise the Odyssey before the term video game existed. Thank you, Magnavox, for pioneering the TV Electronic Game Center. Designed for everyone, the Wiimote upended the video game industry's direction towards hardcore gaming and made a controller that anyone could pick up. Nintendo wanted something that felt intuitive and could be held with one hand, so they took reference from our cell phones and TV controllers, as these were things people knew how to work. While Nintendo had released motion controls in 1989 with the Power Glove, the Wii changed the industry by designing a system around motion control entirely. The tracking and accelerometer in the Wiimote made for gaming that wasn't hidden behind pressing buttons, but where players could mime the action. The Wiimote was also packaged with straps, but as most of you know, wasn't always played with them. The Wiimote and its party-friendly gaming library made for one of the best-selling consoles of all time. In 1983, Nintendo released the Nintendo Entertainment System, and with it, the NES Pad. The controller took the directional pad from the handheld Game & Watch series, added 2 action buttons, a start and a select button, and shoved it all into a perfect grey, black and red rectangle, a prototype for almost every controller to come. The iconic design didn't come without growing pains. Players were tied to joysticks, and there were reports of players initially using the D-pad by pinching it between their fingers. The D-pad was designed by using a ball pivot at the bottom of a single piece of plastic. This created a seesaw motion, rising the opposite end of what you're pressing. This helped players more intuitively understand where they are and let them focus on the game instead of the controller. The NES Pad is also a marvel of industrial design. The thing was built to withstand punishment. Even today, there are still plenty available in working condition on second-hand markets. By creating an intuitive controller that still feels right almost 40 years later, the NES Pad became a visual icon for generations of gamers. A lot of time, people with disabilities get excluded by the choices designers make. It's unintentional, but it happens, said principal designer for the Xbox. Beginning in 2015, the team at Microsoft sought out to change that with the Xbox Adaptive Controller. The controller allows players with limited mobility to connect buttons, joysticks and switches to 19 input jacks to mimic a standard controller. Players can plug in foot pedals if they can't use their hands, or plug in a quad stick which lets quadriplegic players sip or puff with their mouths to control movement. There is also a shift mode which allows players to change a button's function mid-game. Jumping in one section can turn into shooting in another. Being a parent means signing up for endless worrying, even when things are going well. And one of those worries is hoping your kids get to enjoy things other kids get to enjoy too. And the Xbox Adaptive Controller, for many, let that happen. The response has been incredible, opening up gaming to over 30 million disabled gamers in the United States and millions more worldwide. From the Magnavox in 1973 to the Xbox Adaptive Controller in 2018, the video game controller has gone through unbelievable evolution. Which controllers blew you away? Which ones bring you nostalgia? Let us know in the comments.